Thanks everyone for joining. For those that don't know me, and most of you do, I'm Phil Aldridge from Fuse Technology. I'm the director for West Australia. Today I'm doing a slightly different presentation to my normal one. I'm normally going into a little bit more detail and in depth about the risks and how we mitigate them. This one is a little bit more about what you might find in your organization that you're not aware of, the hidden security risks inside your business. So there's a lot of slides to go through. So I'm going to be, and there's not a lot of text on each of them. So I'm going to go through them relatively quickly. So there's a little bit of information about Fuse and kind of what we do, and then we'll get into the nuts and bolts of it. Look, why does Fuse exist? I think so many companies now use technology. They have all sorts of different systems that they run, some on-premise, some in the cloud, and most people don't really operate now the way that they think technology is being used within their organization. Things have moved on so rapidly, but people's understanding of the tech hasn't really caught up from a corporate perspective. So, Fuse is here to help people align their technology with the requirements of the business. We're going to be talking about some of the risks in the business. Why is that important? Well, this is one of my favorite slides that I show on all my presentations. Cybercrime, big business. If you looked at it as an economy in terms of GDP, it'd be the third largest economy in the world. This covers drugs, slave trading, hacking, etc. It's a big business. So $10.2 trillion. I would think in a few years' time we're probably going to get up to the levels of China, no doubt about it. Whether we'll get to the level of the US, I'm not too sure. I guess most of you know this. The assumption that it's always big businesses that are targeted isn't the case anymore. We are all, if we're in a small business, and I classify a small business as sort of sub 100 people. Most of us on this call will be in a business of sub 100, or we'll be a solopreneur, or we'll have 1 or 2 staff. What's important to understand is that you are part of a bigger supply chain. So you work with companies and you have access to data and client information. So you are actually the target, because you're the ones with unless you're a Fuse client, you're the ones with the easiest opportunity to hack. The big companies, your Rio, your BHPs, your HSBCs, they spend millions and millions of dollars on protecting themselves. Most companies on this call won't be spending millions of dollars. I'm not saying you need to, but you need to do the basics well. And that's what Fuse is here to help you with. Why is this getting more and more relevant? Big part of that is AI. I was really hoping to be able to do a presentation without mentioning AI, but it just seems to be impossible these days. So AI has enabled everybody to get into the cyber criminal space. It's quite easy to spin up something to help you do something bad. The flip side of that is that companies like Fuse can use AI to help us mitigate the risk for our clients. So it's a bit of checks and balances, a bit of yin and yang. But it's certainly changed the game. And I would think that the majority of people don't really know what's happening in their organization, and the cost of not knowing can be quite serious. If something goes wrong, and statistically 1 in 5 companies do get hacked and go on to be bankrupt. If you do get hacked, are you going to survive? I was dealing with a potential client who's been hacked, and they lost 30 terabytes of data, and which is all their data. It all got ransomware. It all got encrypted. The problem there is they can't recover that data because they don't want to pay the charge to unencrypt, because they probably won't get it unencrypted anyway. But the reason they got hacked is because of their IT provider. The IT provider wasn't secure. So it's not just you and whether you're doing the right thing, it's your upstream supply chain and your downstream supply chain that you need to worry about. Again, gonna have to mention AI. So if anyone's counting how many times I mention AI today, please let me know at the end of the presentation. Your staff will already be using AI. You will already be using AI. The problem is that whilst you might know what you're doing, you probably don't know what your staff are doing, and you can produce really, really effective tools to help yourself in your organization, and your staff will be doing it for you, that you upload information to some system and it gives you a brilliant output and you go, great, I'm away, I've got a competitive advantage and it's all fantastic. Problem is, the flip side is you don't know what your staff are doing necessarily. You don't know if they're uploading data to the cloud. You don't know what data they're uploading, and you just don't know how that's going to impact your business. We're going to a little bit more on one of the case studies is a bit more about that later. So we'll go over that later. Fuse, just a one slider on Fuse. We've got just over 60 people in 5 different locations around the world. We provide 24/7 follow the sun support, and we've been in operations for about 12 years now. We're an outsourced secure IT service provider, focusing on cybersecurity for professional services firms mainly. And we try to make sure, we partner with our clients to make sure that they and their data are secure. So straight into the presentation now. I'm going to go through 5 scenarios based on one company. And the purpose of this is to find out if something went wrong in your business tomorrow, would you still be able to keep running? The company we're going to talk about is a company called Landmark Property Group. They're owned by a guy, it's a makeup firm owned by a guy called David. They're a commercial real estate and property management company, small firm, only 12 employees. Let's assume that they're in Australia because most of us are in Australia. They're growing fast. They've got a good reputation. They've got a great team of staff with them. Like most of our clients, they run off a Microsoft 365 platform. They've got a CRM solution that could be, it could be Salesforce, it could be Zoho, it could be any sort of CRM. And then they let their staff use any other tool that they want to do their job. They don't have a dedicated IT person. And for the purposes of today's presentation, we'll assume that they don't have an IT service provider as well. So, hidden risk number 1, a helpful member of staff who has a memory problem. So at 9 o'clock in the morning, staff member Alex, he opens up ChatGPT. He's got a presentation to prepare. He pastes all of the Q3 financials of Landmark into ChatGPT, and he asks ChatGPT to help him write an executive summary for the investors. ChatGPT produces a wonderful presentation that he reviews and he sends it off to David, the boss. What's going on here is that sensitive data of the organization has been shared into a non-corporate AI. This data now lives inside the AI tool. You can't get it back. And the problem is there was no policy in place to protect the organization's data. And there was no tools in place to stop it from happening. Why does this matter? Well, if you upload your company's data, that's one thing. You might get into trouble with your boss. If you upload your client's data, potentially you might get into trouble with your client, especially if it gets, if that data gets leaked into the sort of the wider internet. So a single mistake can be a huge problem for an organization. And as is always the case with the internet, whether it was AI driven or any other cloud-based solution, once you've actually put your information out there, you can't go, oh, whoops, I didn't mean to do that. Can I get it back, please? Undo. There is no undo button. Okay. So how do you fix something like this? 2 things. One, you can, well, I've only shown one here. One, you can implement a clear and enforceable policy that tells your team what is okay to do and what they shouldn't do. I'd argue that a policy is great to fix or to be able to hold somebody accountable if they've done something wrong, but it doesn't stop people doing it in the first place. So the way that Fuse handles that is we restrict access to sanctioned only AIs. So if a client comes to us and say, we only want to use corporate version of Claude, we'll restrict that. And then anybody that tries to go to ChatGPT, it won't work. Or any other AI solution, it won't work. It will push them back to Claude and to the corporate instance of Claude, not their personal Claude account. So that means that we're only ensuring that the only AI they can use is the ones that we allow. And normally you'd want to try and keep it within your Microsoft tenant. There's ways of doing that, especially with ChatGPT, slightly different with some of the other ones. But basically you want to restrict what people can do, what they can access, and what they can upload. Hidden risk number 2, the office that you can't see. This obviously became much more prevalent since that COVID issue that we had a few years ago. So Priya, she's a member of the staff at Landmark, and she's sitting in a coffee shop at 4 o'clock in the afternoon. She's on her laptop, and she decides to connect to the Wi-Fi in the coffee shop, the public Wi-Fi, and she carries on working and doing stuff because she's got stuff to do for tomorrow's deadline. Now, what's happening here? She thinks that she's connected to the coffee shop's official Wi-Fi. She may not be. She may be connected to some malicious Wi-Fi that exists. She's working on her own device that may or may not be a company device. But if it's her personal device, it's outside of the company's control. There's no advanced security on that laptop. It might be that she's only got the antivirus that comes with the laptop and there's no monitoring software. There's nothing special. And more importantly, because the company doesn't have an IT company and no IT department, no one's told her to install anything on her machine. She's just using the machine that she bought from JB Hi-Fi, and it works and she does her job. The reason that this now exists is because historically we were all in an office and most offices had a firewall, and that firewall protected people from doing silly things. Now everybody is everywhere. We're all digital nomads. So now your team can work anywhere they want. There's more entry points and there's less visibility to the organization of what's going on. So the fix here, whilst you can't control necessarily where people work, you can control the connections. So you could restrict your staff's laptops so that they can only hotspot from their mobile phones. They can't connect to any public Wi-Fi. You need to make sure that the security that you have in place extends beyond the office. So realistically, the device needs to be protected, which means that the protection follows the user. Basically, you protect the user, you protect the device. It's a great start. And how we do that at Fuse is we restrict access to clients only to devices that the company owns. There are a few examples of that, and there's a couple of people on the call that I know that have a few privately owned or staff-owned devices. We don't like that. There are ways around it, but it requires the employee to accept a few restrictions on their device. But what you want is you want every device that your staff uses to access your systems to be relatively well restricted so that they can't do anything silly. And that requires installing security software that protects bad things from happening. And that's a fundamental part of what Fuse does for our clients. Hidden risk number 3, data lives everywhere and nowhere. It used to be that data was only on a server in your office and it was backed up. Well, you hope it was backed up every day. That's not the case anymore. So a client of Landmark, Henderson Partners, they've called a member of staff at Landmark and with a question about a lease amendment. So David, the person who picked up the call, he shouts around the office and he goes to the team, where's the latest version of the Henderson file? Somebody says it's on Google Drive, somebody else says it's on someone's desktop, and somebody else thinks it's in Dropbox. Now, all 3 of those situations may be correct. But all that means is that you don't have a single source of truth of where all your company data is. So what's happening under the hood here? Cloud sprawl. You've got multiple legitimate or not legitimate solutions being used by your employees. It raises a security risk, and it also raises a compliance problem. It means that if you're just securing one thing, one platform, say SharePoint or OneDrive or Google Drive, it's easier to secure one thing than it is to secure 3, 4, or 5 different things that are all doing the same, effectively the same solution. And fundamentally, if you don't know where your data is, you can't protect it. If you don't have restrictions on what your staff can do with your data, they could upload all your client files to their personal cloud, Google Cloud account, and you have no control of that. You don't know it's happened because you're not monitoring for it, you're not stopping it from happening, and that's what's happening under the surface for most organizations these days. I actually was able to send a report to a client the other day that doesn't restrict what their staff can do, but we do monitor what their staff does. And I was able to send the client an email to say, one of your staff has just copied this much data, it was a significant amount of data, onto an external hard disk. Now, this may be legitimate company business. It might be a company device that they're taking to somewhere else for presentations, or it might be non-sanctioned data copying, but at least my client is now aware and can take appropriate actions. So how do you fix this? You audit every tool that your staff uses to make sure that you know what the spread of data is. You establish policies for where data is supposed to be and who can access it. Most companies give pretty much all access to all data. You also need to check compliance requirements for your industry. So for example, if you are an NDIS supplier storing your data on Google Drive, you would be non-compliant because Google has no Google Drive servers in Australia, and you are not allowed to store your data offshore as an NDIS supplier unless you pre-inform everybody whose data you store, and most companies don't do that. How do we get around this at Fuse? So we restrict staff from copying sensitive data or any data based on a company's policy. We stop them from copying it to non-sanctioned cloud storage. We restrict how much they can copy, and then we monitor activity and we alert on attempts when people try to bypass systems. We don't really want to restrict too much such that your staff can't do their job, but we do want to have a enforceable policy in place that stops people maliciously affecting your company, because once they've copied the data somewhere else, it's very hard to get it back. So then we get into ghost employee. So this is an interesting one, and I guess a lot of small companies do this. This is where you outsource or you employ a contractor. You can't have a full-time staff because you don't have the funds for it, but you do have funds for a part-time contractor. So Landmark, they hire a freelance bookkeeper, Lisa, and Lisa's been working for a while, and she's now finished working for the organization. The project that she was commissioned to do is wrapped up, and she's moved on. She was given an account at Landmark so that all of the data wouldn't leave the organization. She wasn't using her personal email account. But what happened is there's no proper offboarding for Lisa or for any employee that leaves the organization, and Landmark didn't really do anything. She just stopped working for the organization. So her account was still valid. Her username and password remained the same. Her account wasn't set to disable, and she, the license probably for her account probably was not removed. So she might still have a business premium license. So whilst this is not a good thing for a contractor, it's also pretty relevant for employees. If you fire somebody and they're not expecting it, they might be quite disgruntled. Or people that have left who realize that they've still got access to systems they shouldn't have, they may think that they're going to do something malicious to your organization and that they won't get noticed. If you're not good enough to block their access once they leave, you're probably not monitoring what they do. So if they can get in and copy your data, even after they've left your organization. Whilst that would be illegal, maybe they can still do it. And there's plenty of examples where people do these days. So every account that was never closed may still have a license associated with it, and you may still be paying for that license. This is probably a bigger issue in some larger organizations where they don't monitor licensing, but smaller firms, generally speaking, know that if they've got 3 staff and they're paying for 5 licenses, there's probably a problem. But if you're not monitoring your license, it's just on your credit card, you're getting billed every month, you don't look at your invoice, you just send the invoice to your accountant every month and they do the bookkeeping, you may be paying for licenses that you're just not aware of. And basically an unmanaged account, as I mentioned earlier, it's just an open door for anybody that has the credentials. I did a presentation the other day talking about Microsoft's new rules and regulations around multi-factor authentication. They're changing the way that authentication works. They're removing the ability for you to receive SMS codes for multi-factor authentication. They're making you use the Authenticator app or some plug-in device. They say it's a security risk. I think it's actually it's more a case of Microsoft doesn't want to pay for all the SMSs that they're sending everybody. But what it does mean is that you're going to have to update your multi-factor authentication, not only for your primary way of authenticating, but also for your secondary way of authenticating. Most people say, I use Microsoft Authenticator and I use SMS as a backup. Well, the SMS as a backup is going to go away, so you need to do something about it. But in a situation like this, if somebody manages to get hold of the username and password and MFA isn't enabled, or it's not enabled properly, or someone's stolen a mobile phone, people can still get into accounts. So you've got to manage these accounts. So who has access to your systems right now? It's a question you need to ask yourselves. I would recommend everyone goes into their Microsoft tenant and just goes, are there any accounts enabled and licensed for staff that have left or contractors that have left my organization, and fix it. So do a formal account review. And then probably have a process in place. And this is more of a sort of governance and compliance question, but have a review every quarter to just do the same thing. Are there still any accounts that aren't that still have access, that shouldn't have access? It's not hard to do. Your IT provider can do it for you. They can give you a report if you have an IT provider. If you don't get one, I know a few good ones. What do we do? So for some of our clients, we monitor for stale accounts. We monitor for lack of activity on accounts. Some clients may not have told us that somebody has left the organization, or that somebody has gone on maternity leave for a few months. The account becomes inactive, and there might be some work that we need to do on that account. And also we do formal offboarding. So when somebody leaves an organization, we don't necessarily remove the account, but we probably change the account to a shared mailbox. We will de-license the account and we will give somebody else access to that account. That means that you're not paying for the account, but you still can keep the data. There are some caveats around that, around the OneDrive information that's there, but speak to your IT provider about making sure you don't lose any offboarded staff's OneDrive data. It should all be in SharePoint anyway, but we all know that people use their OneDrives. Hidden risk number 5, the apps that you didn't approve, probably the apps that you did approve. I probably should modify that one. It's an interesting one. So Tom, another one of your employees, decides, or an employee of Landmark, sorry, decides to download a free maintenance app. He's seen some good reviews on it and he downloads it, he installs it, and he uploads all of the Landmark tenants, contact and property details to it. He uses it, it's a great piece of kit, but a week later, a breach hits this app, and he doesn't know about it. Nobody at Landmark knows about the breach. Most people at Landmark don't know that he's using this app. And what happens there under the surface is he's installed an app that no one's reviewed. You don't know where the data is. You very rarely look to see who produced the app, where's the data stored, who owns the data that sits on this app. You might think that you own the data, but probably the terms and conditions state that they might own the data that's on their platform. You don't really check to see whether or not it's a reputable company. If it's on the App Store, it's a bit better, but if it's just an app that they've downloaded from a website and installed, that's not good. And then when the app was breached that you did or didn't know about at Landmark, all your client data has been exposed. You may or may not know. You may find out 6 months later. You may find out when one of the Landmark clients calls them and says, "Why has my data been sent to me from somebody else? Why is that data in there? I only gave it to you." So the way to fix this is a proper process at management level to review not only the new tools that people want to use, but the existing tools that you use. Are they fit for purpose? Are they secure? Do they come from reputable companies? Have they been breached in the past? I get asked a lot about password managers and which password managers should we use. And I generally speaking tell people it doesn't really matter which one you use because they've all been hacked at least once. And if they've been hacked once, they'll be hacked again. It's just a case of, are you using them? Are you putting all your information in there? Are you encrypting your passwords and still using complex passwords? Try and use a reputable one. But you need a process for all the tools that you use, all the apps that you use, just to make sure that they're fit for purpose, and make sure that you're not using personal versions of ChatGPT or personal accounts of this. Make sure it's a business account. You don't want someone to sign up for a CRM solution using their credit card, their personal email address, that they then expense back to the company. You fire that staff 2 years later, they cancel that account or that CRM account and stop paying for it, and suddenly you've lost access to your CRM that has all your company's data in it. Quite easy to do. A lot of companies end up in these situations. So what does Fuse do about this? So we block users from installing unapproved apps. And for those of you on the call that have come across this, you'll see pop-ups every now and again when you do something that you want to install, and it pops up and says, "Yeah, you can't do that. You've got to get approval." And you'll say, "Please, Mr. Fuse, can we use this tool?" And we'll go through a rigorous process to go, is this a safe app? Is there any malicious code within the app? If there is, we won't let you use it. If there's not, we'll probably ask your management, is it okay for your staff to use this app? And if your management goes yes, we'll approve it, and we'll go, do you want to approve it for just that one person or for your organization as a whole? You'll let us know, and we will then approve or not approve accordingly. And that's what the formal approval process is. But I suggest that you all do it for your existing apps as well as any new app that you do. You should know what apps you're using, but probably ask all your staff. If you went round and asked them all, what are we using? What do you put our company data on? You'll be surprised at the list that you get back. So let's just have a bit of a refresh at Landmark Property again. So this all happened on Tuesday. It was a pretty bad day for Landmark on Tuesday. So Alex pasted the financials into ChatGPT. Shouldn't have done that. Priya connected to a public Wi-Fi that she hoped was a secure one. It may not have been. Somebody found out that files were in one of 3 different platforms, 2 of which may not be sanctioned platforms for the organization to use. Lisa, the contractor doing the accounts, her actual account wasn't closed when she moved on from Landmark, and it might still have been licensed. And Tom's free maintenance app that he's been using has been hacked, and all the data for your clients, tenancy and property information, has all been leaked onto the internet. So I suppose, are you aware that these things are happening? As an organization, how many of you do you think have covered off these points? These aren't the usual ones that I talk about necessarily, This is, as I said, this is a slightly different presentation for me, but do you know what's going on under the surface? Do you know what your staff are doing in your organization? I'd argue that a lot of you don't. And that's because you've got a lack of visibility on four things: your data, the access information that people have to your systems, the tools that your people are using to access your data, and the expectations of your organization. I come across an awful lot of organizations that don't have anything in place for any of this. They buy a Microsoft 365 account, they set up a SharePoint, and they don't do any protection or security changes to that Microsoft tenant. And then they let their staff go ahead and do what they want. They don't even have policies in place to restrict what people do. And when I say a policy, I'm talking about even a written policy. They don't have a formal AI policy or a formal computer usage policy stating you're allowed to use this device, you're allowed to log in from these locations, you're allowed to use these systems, you're not allowed to do this, this, and this. Those policies are good to stop people, not to stop people, to reinforce to people what's expected of the company. It doesn't stop people doing it. It just tells them what they're supposed to do. And if you've got good employees, they all do the right thing, or at least you hope they do the right thing. But there's 2 points about that. One is people are fallible. People will make mistakes, and it might not be a deliberate mistake, but they might accidentally upload some data to some platform accidentally, thinking they were doing the right thing because they were in a rush. Or they might, oh, I didn't bring my phone with me for some reason, or it's running out of battery, I'll just connect to this Wi-Fi in the coffee shop. So you have the policies in place, but people will still make mistakes. Then there's the people who deliberately do something malicious to cause your company a problem. They are a disgruntled employee, or they're a disgruntled ex-employee, or they're a hacker trying to get in. So the policy isn't going to help in those situations. What you need to do there is you need to implement systems that stop people from doing these things. Stop them from using any other AI platform or any other cloud storage solution. Stop them from accessing any Wi-Fi account that isn't sanctioned by your organization. You block them from installing any application that isn't authorized by your organization. And then the expectations of the organization not only are very clear through policy, but they're also very clear through the system implementation and the restrictions that you place on your employees to stop them from making accidental mistakes, stop them from doing malicious things. But unless you put this in place, these things will happen. And you can do some of this stuff yourself, but a lot of it is way above the pay grade or the skill set of most business owners. Plus, a business owner should be doing what they're good at, selling the services that they can do, and outsourcing what they're not good at to somebody else. You know, you outsource your accounting unless you're an accounting firm. You outsource your legal unless you're a legal firm. You outsource your IT unless you're an IT firm. They're the three things that you can outsource to organizations that will do a better job than you can. And that allows you to carry on doing a great job for your business, and allows your staff to do a great job for your business. So if something went wrong tomorrow, would you know how to respond? Do you know who has access to what? Do you know where your data lives? Do you know what tools your team are using? If you haven't got this documented, then if something goes wrong, you have no way of knowing. You're behind the 8 ball. You're scrambling to try and find this information out. So probably an audit's a good idea. An audit isn't hard to do. You just either do it yourself, understand what questions you need to be asking and do an audit yourself, or you get somebody in to help you do an audit. Fuse can do an audit for you. Many companies can do an audit for you. Find out exactly where you stand. I mean, I've ripped through this a little bit quicker than I expected to. As I said, it's not my standard presentation. You You can scan this QR code. I promise you it's a legitimate QR code. It's the same one that's on my screen. It should take you to an assessment, and you can do your own questionnaire. There's no commitment, and you'll find out exactly where you stand. Fuse are here to help you if you need any help. I've always told people, if you're in the Perth vicinity, buy me a coffee. I'll have a chat with you, and I'll tell you what you need to be thinking about. If you want to do anything with us afterwards, that's great. If you don't want anything to do with Fuse afterwards, that's also great, as long as you take action. If you come to me with a problem and I try to help you to fix that problem, make sure you do something about it. I think the regulations are getting stricter and stricter. Directors are now on the hook for if something gets leaked in your organization. It's getting more and more onerous. Those rules and regulations are changing. If you do business overseas, if you're dealing with Europe, the UK, China, Singapore, Japan, their privacy regulations are as strict, if not stricter, than Australia's privacy regulations. Those regulations also dovetail with Australia's and butt heads with Australia. So if you're dealing in multiple jurisdictions, you might find that you can't comply to all of those regulations. So you've got to work out what's the best option, and that's something you need to take advice on. I'm going to open it up to any questions. I'm hoping there's going to be some because I've gone through it quite quickly. If you've got any questions, there is a Q&A session there. There's also a chat session there. Oh, Julian's just told me the QR code takes you to my calendar. Okay, sorry, I thought it took you to our free questionnaire. What I'll do after this is I'll get Julian to also share our cybersecurity questionnaire with everybody that's on this call, so that you can run through that. It takes you about 10 minutes. It's designed for business owners to be able to answer, I think it's about 25 questions. Most of them are simple, you should know the answer to, and if you don't know, there is a don't know answer. So you can rip through the questions. It will give you a report at the end of it, and it will tell you where you stand, and then you can reach out to us and go, hey Phil, we don't really understand part of this report, or we want to do something about the part of the report where it says, you know, things aren't good. Could you come and help us? So book in to see me if you want, or do the questionnaire if you want. Any questions? I am sorry that I booked you all in for an hour, but I'm going to give you back 20 minutes of your life, if that's okay.
I don't see any questions, Phil.
No, cool. So on the cool. On the expectation that no one has any questions, look, some of you know me. My email address is, if you want to take a screenshot of this one, there's my email address, my phone number, and you just hit me up for a coffee, buy me a coffee, and we'll have a chat. So I really hope that was an interesting presentation for you all. As I said, slightly different to normal, bit more use case scenario rather than just sort of facts and figures. But yeah, please reach out if you have any questions. And thank you all for joining, and I look forward to hearing from you all in the future. Thanks, bye-bye.